We're the tour guide with you in mind. Eye on the Bay.
You've seen the thousands of box-like containers when you've zoomed past them on BART. There's containers upon containers upon more containers, so that last year alone, $38 billion worth of goods came into the Port of Oakland. And no doubt you've seen the giant cranes.
How high are we right here?
We're up about 140, 145 feet.
And you've seen those huge cargo ships steaming toward the Port of Oakland.
Dead slow ahead.
On this Eye on the Bay, we've got our eyes set squarely on one of the largest seaports on Earth, how it impacts your daily life.
We like to say if you wear it, eat it, or drive it, it's probably moving through the Port of Oakland.
Why does everything sail to the East Bay instead of to San Francisco, which used to be the West Coast's mightiest port? And why the Port of Oakland is on the front line in the war on terror?
The portals are passive radiation scanners.
Climb aboard as we journey to the Port of Oakland. And it all begins here, early one morning before sunrise, aboard the MSC Judith. That's where our journey began. Our day began here at San Francisco's Pier 9. It's where San Francisco bar pilots live, literally. Pilots are on watch 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and sleep here waiting for ships to call from ports around the world.
Here's what we call a pilot area, and we have the pilot boat California is out there.
12 miles outside the Golden Gate, a bar pilot meets and then boards a vessel to steer it safely to port. We were invited to climb aboard in calmer waters inside the bay. Now, by law, and by that I mean the law of physics, a 135,000-ton ship just can't pull over and stop. Not in a hurry, anyway. So we had to jump on from a pilot boat while the ship was still moving.
Midship.
Already on board the Judith was San Francisco bar pilot Mike Sweeney,
Dead slow ahead.
who took control of the ship from its captain,
Starboard 10.
who isn't familiar with the bay's tricky tides, its currents and shallows. Also on board are thousands of cargo containers from China, representing millions of dollars in merchandise on its way into the Port of Oakland. And they've got to get there safely and on time. The MSC Judith is huge. It's about 1/5 of a mile long, it's 140 feet wide, and at its narrowest point, the Oakland Inner Harbor is only 1,000 feet wide. So they got to thread a needle getting this properly under the cranes to get ready to offload.
Stop engine.
What happens next is a ballet of colossal machinery, with dedicated people working on the docks and high above the docks, juggling huge boxes of cargo, some weighing 65 tons from halfway around the world, on their way to your doorstep. And Bay Area people have been performing this ballet for over 150 years. But this performance didn't debut at the Port of Oakland, but rather across the bay. San Francisco was the port, going all the way back to the 1849 gold rush. A year after, ship traffic was so heavy that the state legislature commissioned the Bar Pilots, and they've been part of the bay scene ever since. For the next 100 years, the Port of San Francisco thrived.
Most famous as one of the world's great seaports,
Ship captains called out for men alongshore to help unload all the goods. The longshoreman became a symbol of San Francisco's work ethic. When the union went on strike in the 1930s, they shut down commerce along the entire West Coast.
Open warfare rages through the streets of the city as 3,000 Union pickets battle 700 police.
Up through the middle of the 20th century, San Francisco and the longshoremen had a lock-on trade throughout the entire Pacific. Oakland, by comparison, was just a sleepy harbor. But in the 1960s, the major export in the shipping business from San Francisco was the shipping business from San Francisco. It all moved across the bay to the Port of Today, the Port of Oakland ranks as one of the largest seaports in the entire country.
So that last year alone, $38 billion worth of goods came into the Port of Oakland.
Omar Benjamin is the port's executive director. In a nutshell, what happened?
Well, what happened is a couple of things. One, this modernization and the transformation of the industry called containerization.
Containerization.
Containerization changed everything.
Yes.
Over in San Francisco, as in other ports around the world, they loaded and unloaded cargo the way it had been done for over a century, on pallets. And then somebody thought, inside the box. They had the bright idea to cram items of almost any size, shape, or weight into a standardized box, a container. That way you can stack them neatly far below and high above the deck. And you don't even have to unpack a container when it gets to shore. You just stick the thing on a truck or a train. The Port of Oakland purchased one of the first cranes in the country to accommodate containers, and business began to sail past San Francisco and land in the East Bay. The Port of Oakland expanded to handle even more containers.
Right beside a large area of factories and industrial sites.
Now, 1,200 ships call on Oakland every year carrying containers. Lots of containers.
So we move roughly 2.3 million TEUs. That translates to a little over 1 million containers a year that move in and out of the Port of Oakland.
Oakland has 20 berths to accommodate ships from around the world.
What's the #1 export out of the Port of Oakland?
Agriculture.
Now, we've all heard about the trade imbalance. More goods being brought into the country than go out.
The #1 source of imports is coming from China.
Not a surprise.
Right.
But at the Port of Oakland,
we have roughly a healthy 50-50 mix of import and export, which differentiates ourselves from a lot of other ports who have a larger percentage of import.
One of the biggest exports, though, out of the Port of Oakland, well, between you and me, it's between you and me. It's air.
Empty containers have to be shipped back to China so that they can stuff them with more stuff to send back to the Port of Oakland.
Well, I'm getting off the container ship right now, but how do you get all of the containers off of the container ship? We'll show you how when Eye on the Bay's look at the Port of Oakland continues after a break.
Welcome back to Eye on the Bay. I'm Brian Hackney, and our look at the Port of Oakland, the nation's 5th largest seaport. Earlier, we escorted a ship, the MSC Judith, as she came alongside from China.
Sandra, Mike, you can put your line up there.
Carrying thousands of containers.
So how do they get the containers from the ship onto the dock with one of the cranes? And it is a delicate operation, as Dave Stoelk finds out.
This is how they used to unload cargo, with a crane. Now, today they still use a crane, but now the Port of Oakland, they took cranes to new heights. How tall is this?
The crane itself, the highest point is 379 feet.
As port spokesperson Marilyn Sandifer explains, Oakland has some of the world's biggest cranes because the port attracts some of the world's biggest ships.
And we have superpost Panamax cranes, which we've been on.
I'm sorry, what?
We have superpost Panamax cranes.
Over the years, ships kept getting bigger. So Oakland had to install post-Panamax cranes to accommodate ships so large they couldn't fit through the Panama Canal. Oh, wow. Well, if you're afraid of heights, this is not the job for you, is it?
No, it's not.
Panama even widened their canal, but still ships got bigger, supersized. Port engineer Bob Meneggio went all the way to China to supervise construction of the world's newest superpost Panamax cranes, the largest in the world.
Oh, I'm very proud. I consider these my cranes. The crane weighs approximately 1,600 tons.
And the entire thing can move up and down the dock.
Okay, now we're going to take off. Everybody's holding on?
Yep. And the crane's cab, where the operator sits, moves back and forth as well. Whoa! Whoa! We're actually going out over the water. Bob couldn't demonstrate the crane's capabilities over a real ship, too much money at stake.
Normally we would be over the ship.
Correct, yeah.
Instead, we dangled far out over the bay. With a video game style joystick, the crane operator can raise or lower a hoist. Flappers are extended at 4 points.
So once you're landed on a container, you lock it, and then you pick it up.
A container full of cargo weighing as much as 65 tons is gently lowered onto a truck. A container can also be loaded onto a ship. It takes a skilled crane operator.
They have good depth perception where they can go right on the top of a box and lock it up within a matter of seconds. An experienced crane operator can do about 30 containers an hour or more.
And they do it day or night, rain or shine, or even in high winds, all the while dangling 150 feet in the air.
Right now winds are gusting to about 40 miles an hour, but that's okay. I've been told this thing is designed to withstand 80-mile-an-hour winds. Let's hope so.
As far as the Port of Oakland is concerned, bigger is better.
We really were able to become a major port in the United States and a major international gateway.
Okay, now that we know how all of the containers get here, what happens next when all of the shipping gets shipped out of Oakland? When Eye on the Bay's look at the Port of Oakland continues. Welcome back to Eye on the Bay. I'm Brian Hackney as we call on the Port of Oakland, one of the country's largest seaports, as evidenced by the millions of cargo containers that come through it every year. But what is in all those containers? Where do they go? And how do we know somebody's not hiding something sinister in one of those nondescript containers? This is just using an X-ray machine to get a peek inside that container.
It'll give us an indication of what's inside.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents use a mobile gamma ray scanner to sniff out containers deemed suspicious. Agent Ed Lowe says the driver scans the container to get an electronic image of what's inside.
And that person is also comparing it with what is supposed to be in the container.
And if something doesn't add up, customs agents open it up to see
if there's any contraband, if there's anything unusual.
This container was cleared.
We're going to reseal it.
In the past, Customs has seized drugs, weapons, and counterfeit goods. Agents are also on alert for a so-called dirty bomb or a nuclear device. So every single truck that leaves the Port of Oakland has to pass through these special detectors.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to determine if the vehicle has a radiological source in it.
In some cases, the trucks head straight out onto the highway, but some go here.
Well, you're at one of the largest deconsolidation centers in Northern California.
GSC Logistics parks ocean containers on one side of the warehouse, opens them up, sorts what's inside, then pushes the merchandise to the other side.
And we're loading it into outbound intermodal trailers that are going to go somewhere in the country this afternoon.
In the old days, says CEO Scott Taylor, product would stay in a warehouse for weeks before shipping.
Now it's on our floor for 30 to 60 minutes. In general, our customers are Target, Walgreens, JCPenney, so that if you've bought a product somewhere in the country, it probably came through this facility.
Some of those containers go across the street to this place.
This is our near-dock intermodal facility at the Port of Oakland for Union Pacific Railroad.
And some of them get put on a train. And sent across North America. Spokesperson Aaron Hunt says Union Pacific recently increased the height of their tunnels over Donner Summit. So now they can double-stack containers at the Port of Oakland.
One of our double-stack intermodal trains can take as many as 300 diesel trucks off the highways.
Our business here as a trucker is to connect all the big boys together. Without us, they fall apart.
Trucks are everywhere around the Port of Oakland. Do you know how many trucks leave the Port of Oakland every day?
10,000 truck trips a day.
Bill Aboudi is president of AB Trucking.
It's going to always start with a truck. It's always going to end with a truck.
Since we live in a global economy, then the Port of Oakland really is the Bay Area's warehouse for things from everywhere on Earth.
We like to say if you wear it, eat it, or drive it, it's probably moving through the Port of Oakland.
That's going to wrap up our look at the Port of Oakland for tonight. And if you want more information, there's two things you can do. Log on to our website, cbs5.com/EyeOnTheBay, or you could become a friend of ours on Facebook, like that. In the meantime, from the port, I'm Brian Hackney. Thanks for watching.